review.
All right, let's talk about NXT. Very good show tonight. Had fun with it very much. We will also be doing stand and deliver predictions. In fact, that will be the blueprint for us to do the NXT review. Now, unfortunately, WrestleTix has not posted how NXT is doing in terms of ticket sales, but it will be held in T-Mobile Arena in Paradise, Nevada. So, a pretty big venue. This is the venue that WWE usually runs when they run main roster stuff. So, that don't explain why we don't have a tally in terms of tickets, but I guess it doesn't matter. I'm pretty sure the tickets are very, very expensive. But I looked at the website, and there's still plenty of tickets remaining. And I think the cost of the tickets have come down, too, because they have a lot of ranges between $40 and $175. So it's not too bad, but I think it was announced that the WrestleMania tickets went down. I'm pretty sure NXT tickets, the cost of the tickets went down, probably in equal measure. I think they said WrestleMania tickets fell like 25% at the beginning of the week. So maybe stand and deliver tickets have gone down at the same time. There was also some issues about, talent were freaking out. They didn't know what time to be at the arena because they have 9 hours slotted for NXT as well, including pre-show and post-show. NXT doesn't need 9 hours. It ended up being a call time is 5 a.m. for NXT because the show was actually going on at 10 o'clock in the morning or 10:30 in the morning or something like that, which is 1 o'clock Eastern here. My God, they can't even, they got to go straight to bed after the Hall of Fame or whatever. Good luck on trying to hang out at the parties. Maybe you'll party that night. But hey, I mean, that wouldn't be too bad. You probably go to WrestleMania, hang out backstage, and, go hang out with Wale and all them. They throwing parties all weekend, and then you got Sunday off. Yeah, it shouldn't be too bad. All right, so let's get into this episode of NXT / predictions. So, we're going to start with the Fatal 4-Way Tag Team Elimination Match for the number one contendership to the women's tag team titles. This match is formed out of all of the losers from the North American Championship qualifiers. So it is the Metaphor, Jakara Jackson and Lash Legend, versus Fatal Influence, which is Fallon Henley and JC Jane, versus Gigi Dolan and Tatum Paxley of Chemical X, versus Cora Jade and Roxanne Perez. Roxanne Perez spent the entire night trying to find herself a partner. And Ava had promised that everybody was going to make the card, but in a different way, because she wasn't doing a last chance for the North American title. And then this was the idea. So they're going to wrestle for the titles apparently on NXT next Tuesday. Looking at this lineup, and I'm seeing that this is on the pre-show. I don't think this is going to be on the pre-show. It looks like this might actually make the main show, but it's listed from what I'm looking at it as a pre-show match. So people might have to actually watch the pre-show this time if you care. It's interesting that we got Roxanne Perez on the pre-show, considering she was one of the bigger stars in NXT, but at the same time, that star has faded, and now, they're moved on to other people. I mean, we got a lot of super seniors in here. JC Jane, Gigi Dolan, the people that just been around forever. And you don't know how much time they got left on the clock. But there is no real loser here. I think every team here could do a pretty good job of having a strong match with Liv and Raquel, or whoever the tag team champions are going to be next week. I'm going to personally go with Cora Jade and Roxanne Perez, simply because I believe that they have been building this match around Roxanne, and it seems like Triple H has been putting Roxanne in different places, trying to find where she fits on the roster. They put her in there with Tiffany just to do a job, but she got a lot of offense in. She was in the Elimination Chamber, so they're not quite sure where to put Roxanne. And I'm thinking the tag team division might be the best for now due to her size and inexperience. And Cora Jade is very inexperienced as well. That's why, kind of questionable. But if we were talking about we need to get people out of NXT, the people need to start moving up, then maybe we should start looking at Chemical X or Fatal Influence, because both of those teams have people in them that have been in NXT for 5 years or more. But I'm thinking that Cora Jade and Roxanne Perez are going to win this match. I think they call themselves Team 2001. And since they never lost the tag team championships, it could be an interesting story that you could tell with the two of them, on top of them making up now. All right, the women's NXT North American Championship ladder match for the vacant title. Zarya versus Kalani Jordan versus Sol Ruka versus Izzy Dame versus Lola Vice versus Thea Hale. Thea Hale is back, and Lola Vice is also back. Both of them had disappeared for a really long time for no good reason. Lola Vice came back and she had an extra long match with Tatum Paxley that was actually not bad. Tatum Paxley had to work kind of heelish here because Lola Vice is still positioned as a babyface. And I had fun with the match. I just thought it was a little too long. And Tatum Paxley has some very unorthodox offense. The splashes in the corner. She does a lot of character stuff, which I enjoy. The only issue here is Lola Vice is kind of wooden, in terms of how she speaks. She doesn't flow very well. But Lola Vice feels to me like one of these, she was on the bubble for a long time where it seemed like it was going to happen for her. She's finally going to break through. And then Julia and Stephanie Vacker came in, and then Jordan Grace came in, and she just fell down the roster. And I'm picking her to win this match. I'm going to pick Lola Vice to win, to be honest. Thea Hale made her return after 9 months. This is her first singles match. She defeated Carmen Petrovich to get into this match. The one thing that I noticed, however, is that her new theme song, because now she's graduated from Chase University, and she gave Andre Chase her blessing to mentor these two guys who have been following him around. I don't know who these people are. I've seen them 100 times, but I don't remember what their names are for nothing in the world. But the theme song they gave her is the old Eddie Edwards theme song from TNA. It's terrible. It's an absolutely terrible song. And it sounds like some royalty-free shit that TKO did not have to pay for. So they didn't mind just dumping it on to Thea Hale. It sounds like something you got off of YouTube. Oh, this is my fire. Ugh. Thea Hale will be a great women's North American champion. Actually, there's probably 2 or 3 really solid choices in here. I'm going to go with Lola Vice, because I think Lola Vice and Sol Ruka are probably going to be the 2 of the most over girls in the match. Thea Hale probably would be one of the most over girls, but she's been gone for so long. I think working her back into the rotation is probably the best option. I think if you're trying to put the belt on somebody right now, Lola Vice is probably your best choice in terms of, fulfilling the prophecy of what they were doing with her. All right, the next match, the NXT Tag Team titles. Nathan Frazer and Axiom versus Hank Walker and Tank Ledger. Jesus H. Christ, I got all the Hank and Tank I could ever ask for on this show. There was a number 1 contenders gauntlet match where Hank and Tank defeated Tyreek and Tyson, The Culling, No Quarter Cash Crew, and Briggs and Inamura. Defeating No Quarter Cash Crew is absolutely bullshit. Tavion Heights and Miles Bourne are probably the best tag team in NXT, not named Axiom and Nathan Frazer, and they're not given a chance. That sucks. We're stuck with bum-ass Hank and bozo-ass Tank. This is not going to be good. They've been building up Hank and Tank, so it's fair that they would give them the shot. But No Quarter Cash Crew is obviously just a better team, more interesting team. Tavion Heights should either be a success in this role or be a singles act. It would make sense that Hank and Tank would win. They're the underdogs, even though they just ran the table. But the question is it finally the end for Axiom and Nathan Frazer? Nobody knows. Like, they've been teasing a breakup. They've been teasing a heel turn for both Axiom and Nathan Frazer, mostly for Nathan Frazer. They teased it again on this episode when he refused to shake Hank and Tank's hand. So there's some work there. There's a sliver of hope that Hank and Tank could win. But I personally wouldn't put them over because I don't think they're very good. If we're going to put any match on the pre-show, it should be this one. Because Hank and Tank versus Nathan Frazer and Axiom, I don't know if that's a pay-per-view match. I'm going to go with Nathan Frazer versus an Axiom to win the match. Okie dokie. We started the show with a fatal four-way match. The number one contender for the NXT North American title. It was Ethan Page versus Eddie Thorpe versus Lexis King versus Wex Lee. This match was solid. It had a lot of big spots in it. A whole lot of big spots. There was a whisper in the wind spot that made absolutely no sense because somebody ended up getting DDT'd in it. So I forget who was on whose shoulders. I think Ethan Page was on Wesley, not Wesley. Ethan Page was on Lexis King's shoulders, or one or the other. And whoever it was, they managed to have Eddie Thorpe by the head. So Wesley climbs to the top rope, does the whisper in the wind, Doomsday Device style. Everybody tumbles down, and Eddie Thorpe is DDT'd. I was like, man, just stop this right now. That's the most contrived spot I've ever seen. Stop it right now. People got into it because people always get into these huge spots, but enough's enough. We don't need that kind of stagey stuff in here. They also did a spot where Lexis King was in a Boston Crab and a crossface at the same time, refusing to give up. And then as he was trying to tap out, Wesley showed up and grabbed his hand. You also saw Wesley throw some of the worst punches in the history of wrestling in this match. I mean, punches that probably couldn't break an egg. They couldn't ruffle the hair on a baby's head. He needs help. Somebody needs to help that guy. But there's a bunch of guys in this match with no charisma. Thankfully, Ricky Starks was outside the ring. He had some aura to this match. Eddie Thorpe ended up getting pushed into him by Ethan Page. Ricky Starks chucked Eddie Thorpe out of the way while pursuing Ethan Page, who hid behind the referee. The referee then ejected Ricky Starks, and the match continued. Ultimately, the finale of this thing was a finisher fest, with a bunch of guys hitting their finishers on each other. The last being Ethan Page hitting his Twisted Grin, which is basically the twist of fate, on to Lexis King, pinning him and becoming the number one contender. After the match, Ethan Page cut a promo, said that he ruined Ricky Starks' first championship win. Now he's going to ruin his first championship reign. And then he got speared by Ricky Starks, who returned to ringside. I'm going to obviously go with Ricky Starks winning this match. There's just no good reason to go with Ethan Page. What would be your reasoning to do that? A lot of AEW fans, of course, are making fun of this because this is one of those matches that you would have saw on AEW Dark. It's like, yeah, and Swerve Strickland was working on 205 Live. I mean, who cares, bro? Like, you have to get over shit like that. In any event, it ought to be solid, but I don't expect it to be spectacular, mainly because of Ethan Page. So I'm going to go for it and just say Ricky Starks is going to win. It just seems right. It feels right. Next, 6-man tag team match, the D'Angelo family. Tony D'Angelo, Channing Stacks Lorenzo, and Luca Crucifino versus the Dark State. And they don't say which 3 members of Dark State it will be. Stacks, I think last week, challenged Dark State to a parking lot fight this week. They met them in the parking lot. It was just Luca and Stacks, however, with Adrian, or Adrian, I'm not sure how we're saying her name. When Luca realizes that Tony D'Angelo wasn't there, Stacks says, well, he ain't coming, because I'm calling the plays. And he was like, what? And he's like, you got to trust me. I'm calling the plays. So they decided to get engaged in a 4-on-1 fight, 4-on-2 fight, with all 4 members of Dark State. this was a actual fun brawl where there was some weapon usage, like there was a lot of crowbars and bats and stuff. You know, it was kind of course, out of the ordinary because guys are getting hit with crowbars and they're not bleeding. You know, there was no blood. Somebody got put through a table. You know, they crashed through drywall. A bunch of people just got fought. They fought from outside the parking lot into the arena and then back outside. When Tony D'Angelo rolled up in his car and he had a crowbar and he went to work on Dark State and they started to flee. Then the cops showed up and Stacks was like, "We got to get out of here." The cops just showed up. And Tony D'Angelo like, "Don't worry about that. They with us." And I was like, "The cops are with y'all? You called the cops? You got cops on the payroll? Okay. So Tony D'Angelo was upset, of course, that Stacks did not tell him about this. And Stacks said, look, he just wanted to handle it. He wanted to take care of this thing. And Tony D'Angelo said, this is not how we do things. We don't, fight in the parking lot. We fight on the biggest stage. Each wanted a 6-man tag match at Stand and Deliver, and he got it. So then he told Stacks to never question him again. Stacks agreed, and then they hugged. And, when men hug on a wrestling show, one is bound to betray the other. I'm thinking Stacks is finally about to break free of this 3-year storyline he's been in. He's been a member of Tony D'Angelo's family for 3 whole years. This is one of the longest running angles in NXT, next to Chase U, which has been going on for a long time, and Carmelo Hayes and Trick Williams was also one that's going on for a long time. This one is probably the longest running story in NXT has been the D'Angelo family. So it's time to sort of start separating these guys. I mean, Luca already works on Evolve pretty much by himself. He's also been doing some stuff with Chelsea Green. He is apparently her attorney or something like that. So they're already kind of showing each character outside of the D'Angelo family. So maybe Tony D'Angelo has been in NXT for a little while too. And it might seem like he's a character who is never going to leave, because what is he going to do on the main roster where they don't play into the character and let him do his vignettes and everything? It's going to be real tough to see how that character gets over on the main roster when he can't do the vignettes and have the presentation like he's got in NXT to make the character work. So he might just be one of these guys who just hangs out in NXT for a long time, much like JC Jane. But Stacks as a singles act should be fun. I'm kind of interested in seeing how he would do this thing by himself. Now, I expect Dark State to win this 6-man tag because I do expect this will be the end of the D'Angelo family. And you may have Stacks, turn on Tony D'Angelo in this match, or maybe afterwards, one or the other. But I do think that heel turn is coming, and I think it's a long time coming, if we're being honest. But the Dark States thing, I'm still not warmed up to it. I know that a lot of people are, want to give it a chance, but it's not fresh enough for me. It still feels like stuff we've seen already. Not original. I want something fresher, something new. This just feels like stuff. This, again, Nexus, Shield, shake it up. Let's do something different. All right, next match, Fatal 4-Way for the Women's NXT Championship. Each girl got to do her own vignette, basically to sell this match. Stephanie Vaquera went home to deliver some replica championships to her dad, and she gave replica championships to like random people on the street. She was just Oprah Winfrey of giving away belts in San Fernando, Chile. You get an NXT championship replica. You'll get an NXT championship replica. It had nothing to do with the match. It had everything to do with she's the pride of this country. She's very proud of it. And she's going to continue to represent. Big thumbs up. Feels like a really sharp departure for her character. because now she's basically representation instead of being whatever the devil horns and all that stuff is about. But whatever. Next was Julia. Julia says that she was waiting for Stephanie Vaquera to offer her a rematch, and then found out that she wasn't going to be offered one, and said that friendships don't matter when the NXT Championship is on the line. She says that Jordynne Grace is strong, but she's going to introduce her to strong style. And Jada Parker is very confident and likes to dish out punishment, but she can never take it. Then she says she doesn't really know them, but she sees Jada Parker and Jordynne Grace as mere obstacles to her getting to Stephanie Vaquera and winning back her championship. So it seems like she got this personal grievance with Stephanie because, they had the one-on-one match. I like that. Even though it's a fatal four-way, she wants to actually beat Stephanie, which is good. Jada Parker did a vignette where she talked about her hometown, basically gave her origin story from St. Lucia, Port St. Lucia, Florida. It looked like a very nice neighborhood. Very nice. She talked about her dad being her soccer coach. But it's like some of this stuff really, I guess, exposes the character, because you really don't get a sense that she grew up hard. And she said that, like, life made me hard. I'm like, your neighborhood looks very nice. It just looks so nice. Compared to what I saw growing up, it looks so nice. You said my dad was my soccer coach. Oh, okay. Like, maybe this is one of those times where we could have came up with a kayfabe, life for her. Because she talks like, something off of, like Jenny from the block, but she looks very much like a middle-class girl who grew up very well. Parents loved her very much, never missed a meal. Never, probably don't know what a food stamp looks like. Well, she wouldn't know that anyway. She's not old enough. But she talked about her uncle, and she actually cried, saying that he was her best friend in her support system. And when he died, she learned that she could never trust anyone. I'm like, what the hell does that mean? And what happened to old Unc? Too many questions, not enough answers. I feel like she kind of exposed her character too much here. This was a vignette that they trying to do that whole shoot era. Oh, I'm going to talk about my real athletic background and all that kind of stuff. It's like, yeah, but it's running contrary to the character that you portray, which is very hood and very street. But whatever, we're just going to have to overlook it, I guess. Then the last one, of course, is Jordynne Grace, which I think is the best one. Jordynne Grace talked about how there was nothing special about her when she first got started. She had negative aura, as she said, and that she didn't have anything that anybody was looking for. She didn't mention that she was like Miss Piggy, which I used to call her Miss Piggy. She didn't mention that at all. But she said she had self-awareness. And she began to start building her body, sculpting herself. And she became laser focused on building her body and became obsessed with it. And she said she wanted to put the work in so that nobody could ignore her. And she wanted people to see that despite the fact that she didn't have the athletic background, she didn't have all of the other things that people thought that she should have, but she did have the work ethic, she did have the look, and that she was putting in all the effort possible to get attention. And I thought, yes, this is the one person, Stephanie Vaquera did a promo where it did nothing to do with her character. It's just her as a hometown hero. Jada Parker did a promo that kind of worked on her character a little bit about, but it also felt like the Raven promos from WCW where you see that he was all rich and shit growing up. Then you had Julia, who had actually a straight up pro wrestling promo, which was fine, mostly in Japanese. But this one felt more like the person has integrated their real story with their character, and it makes the most sense, in terms of a synergy of all the important bits of what we're talking about here. There was nothing that I thought contradicts who she pretends to be on, or who she is on TV. I shouldn't say pretends. That's not really a good word. But who she is on TV. So that's good. And it was really interesting to see that this is what happens when you, or when she says she puts in the work. She starts saying like dedication and discipline and all these values and things like this. I like that. So the women's championship match, I think Stephanie Vaquero clearly wins the match. She just won the title. I don't think they're going to take it from her just yet. If my second choice, if I was allowed to have a second choice, would probably be Jordynne Grace. But I think Stephanie Vaquero is going to win. And I think the goal ultimately is to have Stephanie and Julia have another singles match. And probably down the line put the belt on Jordynne. That would be my guess. I don't think Julia is going to be in NXT much longer, if we're being honest. But it seems like they're going to turn Julia heel. Which might be for the best, because both her and Stephanie and Jordynne Grace all being baby faces, it's not going to work. So Julia is probably going to end up turning heel. And Jada Parker is just there for window dressing. I don't think there's really that much of a chance of her winning this match at all. But, hey, you got to give the young ones an opportunity too. All right, so the main event, Obafemi versus Trick Williams versus Javon Evans for the NXT Championship. The final promo segment on the show was the three of them arguing against each other. It was a lot of the same stuff that's been said before. You know, Trick Williams basically owned up that he's lived long enough to become the villain. So he does have some of that Carmelo Hayes stuff floating through him. But he says that he's still the man around here. Obafemi says that Trick Williams is a broken record and that he's just following the spotlight, but he's in the spotlight, and he called Javon Evans a child later. Javon Evans cut probably his best promo yet, and he sounds very natural, but he also sounds kind of sleepy. I don't know what it is by young guys. Maybe it's a southern thing, but he uses a whole lot of slang. Like, he uses a lot of slang. Yo, bro. You know, I was like, whoa, okay. Yeah, he's only 20, so this is it's true to who he is. But his promo went on for a long time. He told Trick Williams to shut up, and then says that he's tired of hearing about Trick Williams wanting to win that title back. He needs to move on. He's dismissed. Then he says that Oba attracts success. He spent most of his time in NXT as a champion. So he was hyped when he dropped Obafemi, because everybody knows it was just a matter of time before Obafemi main events WrestleMania. And then he says, but he walks around like the place revolves around him, and he's going to prove at Stand and Deliver that it does not. So they ended up at a brawl segment. Of course, these things always end in brawls. There's good luck trying to find something in wrestling where it doesn't end in a fight. And Javon Evans is standing tall at the end, holding the NXT Championship in the air. It doesn't look right. It looks too early for this. Very, very early. He's probably not going to win this match. And I wouldn't be against Javon Evans winning, but I don't think he's ready for the spot yet. You know, I definitely think Obafemi wins. I think Obafemi probably pins Javon Evans, and you save the Obafemi Trick Williams rematch down the line. But that depends on whether they're going to, how long they plan to hold on to Obafemi. Obafemi, much like Ilya Dragunov and Carmelo Hayes before him, probably could use more time in NXT. Sometimes Triple H gets a little happy and they start snatching people out too early, which is, they said Vince was doing stuff like that, but I think Triple H does it too. Because I definitely think Ilya Dragunov could have spent more time in NXT, and I definitely think Carmelo Hayes could have spent more time in NXT as well. But Obafemi, if you're not going to do something with him, he could be like the black version of Gunther, but I don't think Triple H is going to see that in him, which is unfortunate. So I would just leave him in NXT for a while. Plus, I think it really does harm NXT if you snatch people out right at the height of their popularity. And that happens way too often. So I would keep the belt on Obafemi and probably milk the feud with Trick Williams a little bit more. Maybe if you're going to turn Trick, you do the Trick Williams-Javon Evans singles match next. But I would keep the belt on Obafemi. And I would probably send somebody down to NXT to feud with him. Somebody that you're not really using on the main roster. You know, somebody you can spare. I wouldn't, you know, hey, we got this partnership with TNA. We're going to just bring some TNA guys over. That's okay. But I don't think it's a worthy thing to do long term. I think if you want to get Obafemi really over with the main audience, what you want to do is you want to bring somebody down to face him. And there's some people that you could probably really put him in the ring with that could be fun. People like Sheamus, somebody like Ludwig Kaiser, who, you know, Ludwig Kaiser's not doing anything. You could bring him down to NXT. You could always send somebody like LA Knight down to NXT or something like that. There's some people that you could send down there who could get some attention on the show and get some eyeballs on these guys that could really help them in the future. I would think the same thing for the tag team division as well, especially since none of these guys are over on the main roster. You could send DIY or the Motor City Machine Guns back to NXT to help them out. You know, it might ingratiate them to the WWE audience a little bit, even though DIY has been around for 5 years and they already worked WrestleMania, so whatever. All right, that's the entirety of NXT. A very good show. I had fun with it. The card for NXT is incredibly stacked. And they decided that everybody whose face is on this show regularly is going to be on this card. I think the only person that's missing is Nikita Lyons. I think she might be the only person. And Shawn Spears. It might be the only two people who, in the entirety of NXT, is not going to be on the show. You know, they really bringing in everybody. But it's NXT. They made sure that everything made sense. So it wasn't that they was just slamming stuff together. It's all got purpose. And if they're going to do a show where you're going to stack all the people that you can possibly think of on the roster on the show at once, like this show is doing, at the very least to make it make sense. And they've done that. But my God, they've got a triple threat match, a fatal 4-way match, a 6-way match. They got 2 fatal 4-way matches. One of them is a tag team variety. And they only got 1 singles match on the entire goddamn card. And that's a bad idea. To only have 1 singles match on the card, that's brain rot. But whatever, man. They're gonna put that one little singles match in between all of this chicanery and chaos. But I'm looking forward to Stand and Deliver quite a bit. I most certainly am interested in the women's ladder match. Definitely interested in the main event, as I like all 3 of those guys. Interested in seeing Ricky perform on his very first NXT pay-per-view. And I'm interested also in the Fatal 4-Way the match for the women's title as well. So they got me interested in some of this stuff, even though I don't like the multiple man matches and things. So my beloved NXT is doing a good job. Now, talk to you guys later, man. Peace out.
Skin tone, so why attach yourself and piggyback the wealth you didn't earn or lack yourself? I'm telling you to own up to your own success and failures. It's a reason why these sleazy guys